Hello, welcome to our next chapter in science, the building blocks of everything. Atoms. They make up everything around us. Pretty fascinating things that we've learned a little bit more about as time goes on. Atomic theory is the idea that matter is made up of smaller particles called atoms. The Greek philosopher Democritus, I'm not sure which way it is, first stated this idea in the 5th century BC. An English chemist named John Dalton revived the idea of atoms in 1801. The first part of Dalton's theory states that atoms are the basic building blocks of which all matter is made. But what is an atom made of? Atoms are made up of 3 types of particles. These particles are protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons and neutrons make up the center part of an atom, called the nucleus. Remember when we studied animal and plant cells, we talked about a nucleus. It's always the center part of something. So protons and neutrons are in the nucleus of our atom. Electrons move around the nucleus in a region called an electron cloud. The number of protons and the number of electrons are equal in an atom. So here we have a drawing. We have our protons and our neutrons in the center or nucleus of our atom. And then we have our electrons kind of bouncing around, making this cloud around the outside edge. The proton is in the nucleus. It's got a positive charge. And it's a big, heavy thing. It doesn't move around a lot. Neutron is in the nucleus. It doesn't have a charge at all. Charge means like when we study magnetism and we have a positive and a negative end. It's also large and heavy and sits in the middle. An electron is moving around. It's negative. So there's some pull between the proton and the electron that keep them inside the atom together, because remember, positive and negative attract like the opposite ends of a magnet. The electron is very light and tiny, and that's why it just moves around in the electron cloud. The element is matter that's made of only one kind of atom. The second part of the atomic theory says that all atoms of a given element have the same basic properties. About 100 elements are found in nature. Scientists have made very tiny amounts of other elements. Usually these human-made elements are larger and less stable than those found in nature. Different elements have different numbers of particles in their atoms. This chart shows some examples of elements. So oxygen is part of the air we breathe. It has 8 protons in the middle, and 8 neutrons, and 8 electrons moving around in the electron cloud. These are some other things that are elements that occur in nature that God created. Gold is one of them, and you can see how many more protons and neutrons and electrons gold has. If you look at the gold in the photograph, imagine you could divide a gold flake, maybe pull a little piece off, a little flake off here. Divide it over and over and over, and at some point you would start to need a microscope to see the tiny pieces. But each piece would still contain millions of atoms. Atoms are teeny tiny little building blocks of life. Well, not just life, but the things that are around us in our world. Atoms can join with other atoms. When 2 or more atoms join, they form a molecule. Some molecules are made of 2 atoms of the same element. Nitrogen and oxygen. There's oxygen again. Those are elements in the air. Nitrogen exists as molecules that are made of 2 nitrogen atoms joined together. Here we go. There's a picture. If you could see nitrogen down to the tiniest little forms, you would see 2 nitrogen atoms together, always together, and that's what makes nitrogen. Oxygen molecules are made of 2 oxygen atoms. Some molecules are much larger. Some molecules in your body are made of hundreds of atoms. Here's the water one, by the way. The third part of the atomic theory states that some molecules are made of atoms of different elements. That's what we're getting to here. Substances that are made of atoms of two or more elements chemically combined are called compounds. A compound isn't easily separated back into the elements that make it up. Water is a compound, or a mixture of two or more elements, hydrogen and oxygen. That's why we have different letters here. This is hydrogen, this is oxygen. A water molecule has two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. Carbon dioxide is a gas we breathe out. It is made of one atom of carbon and two atoms of oxygen. So there are different substances. Every substance is made of atoms. We have something called a molecule, which is atoms that join together. Sometimes it's two of the same, sometimes it's different that are joined together. And then when we have two or more elements chemically combined, we call that a compound. Pretty fascinating when we get into all the little details of God's creation.